The clinical definition of a cult requires surprisingly few elements: a charismatic leader whose word becomes law, followers who surrender their critical faculties at the altar of belonging, the systematic rejection of external reality in favor of internal mythology, and the demonization of anyone who dares question the sacred narrative. By every conceivable metric, what we are witnessing in the MAGA movement is not politics as traditionally understood, but rather the most successful cult indoctrination of millions in modern history. Consider the spectacle of January 6, 2021. Not the violence itself, though that was instructive enough, but the aftermath. Here were people who had live-streamed their own federal crimes, who had defecated in the halls of Congress, who had erected a gallows for the vice president, and who now insisted, with straight faces and teary eyes, that they were political prisoners and patriots. They had watched their leader lose an election by 7 million votes, lose 60 court cases challenging that election, have his own appointed judges laugh his claims out of court, and yet they believed, truly believed, that he had won in a landslide. This is not political disagreement. This is not partisan passion. This is the complete abandonment of empirical reality in favor of whatever the dear leader proclaims to be true at any given moment. And what a leader they've chosen. A man who has been credibly accused of sexual assault by over 24 women, who has been found liable for rape in a court of law, who paid hush money to a porn star while his third wife was home with their newborn, who has declared bankruptcy 6 times, who tried to overthrow American democracy rather than admit defeat, who continues to obstruct the release of the Epstein files, covering up the largest child trafficking ring in US history because his name is riddled throughout it. And yet his followers call him God's chosen instrument. The perversion of Christianity by the MAGA cult deserves its own special circle in Dante's imagination. Here is a movement that claims Jesus Christ as its lodestone while following a man who embodies every single deadly sin with the thoroughness of a performance artist. Pride. He puts his name in giant gold letters on everything he touches. Greed. He literally gold plates his toilets. Wrath. He threatens nuclear war on Twitter at 3 in the morning. Envy. He cannot bear that Obama had larger inauguration crowds. Gluttony. The man's diet consists entirely of McDonald's and well-done steak with ketchup. Sloth. He spent a full quarter of his presidency on the golf course. Lust. Where shall we even begin? And yet evangelical leaders queue up to lay hands upon him and declare him anointed. They compare him to King David, to Cyrus, to any biblical figure who might excuse their wholesale abandonment of every principle they claim to hold sacred. They sell their birthright not even for a mess of pottage, but for Supreme Court judges and the hollow promise that someone, somewhere, is suffering more than they are. The most revealing moment comes when you present a MAGA cultist with incontrovertible facts. Show them the court documents, play them the recordings, present them with their leader's own words on video, contradicting whatever he said yesterday. Watch what happens. The eyes glaze, the jaw sets, and then comes the mantra, fake news, deep state, Trump derangement syndrome. But what about Hunter Biden's laptop? This is not the response of a political movement. This is the response of a Scientologist asked about Xenu, of a Branch Davidian asked about David Koresh, of any cultist asked to examine the obvious lies of their chosen prophet. The abandonment of fact has become so complete that MAGA adherents now inhabit an entirely parallel reality. In their universe, vaccines are killing millions. The 2020 election was stolen by Italian satellites and Venezuelan voting machines. Public schools are performing gender reassignment surgeries during recess, and a global cabal of pedophile Democrats drinks the blood of children in pizza restaurant basements. QAnon, that fever dream of fascist fantasy, wasn't an aberration of MAGA, it was its logical conclusion. But perhaps the most cult-like aspect of MAGA is the absolute nature of its loyalty test. You cannot be 90% MAGA. You cannot agree with most of it but have some reservations. The moment you express the slightest doubt about the leader, as Mike Pence learned, as Liz Cheney learned, as anyone who has ever worked for Trump eventually learns, you become the enemy. You become a rhino, a traitor, a member of the deep state conspiracy. Watch how they turned on Pence, a man so fundamentalist he won't dine alone with a woman not his wife, the instant he refused to overturn the Constitution for Trump. 4 years of absolute servility counted for nothing. One moment of choosing democracy over the dear leader, and the mob literally erected a gallows for him. This is the binary world of the cult. You are either with the leader completely, or you are the enemy completely. There is no middle ground, no room for nuance, no space for questioning. The leader is infallible, even when he contradicts himself within the same sentence. The leader is strong, even when he whines like a toddler denied candy. The leader is a genius, even when he suggests injecting bleach to cure COVID. The MAGA movement has also perfected that classic cult technique: isolation from outside information sources. Don't trust the media, they're told. Don't trust the scientists. Don't trust the doctors. Don't trust the teachers. Don't trust anyone but me and the people who agree with me. They've created an entire alternate media ecosystem: Fox, Newsmax, OAN, 1,000 podcasts and YouTube channels, all reinforcing the same message: everyone is lying to you except us. And like all cults, MAGA preys on legitimate grievances and real pain: the factory jobs that aren't coming back, the opioid crisis that's killing their children, the changing demographics that make them feel like strangers in their own towns. These are real issues deserving real solutions. But instead of solutions, the cult offers them enemies: the immigrants, the liberals, the woke mob, the globalists, and we all know what that particular dog whistle means. The genius of Trump, if we can call it that, is that he understood something fundamental about human nature. People would rather feel special than be informed. They would rather be told they're victims of a vast conspiracy than admit they've been left behind by economic forces beyond anyone's complete control. They would rather blame their problems on Mexican farm workers than on the billionaires who've captured our government. And so he tells them they're special, they're real Americans, they're patriots. They alone understand what's really happening. Everyone else is either a fool or a conspirator. It's the same psychology that draws people to flat earth theories and anti-vaccine movements. The intoxicating feeling of being one of the elect, one of the few who truly sees. The damage this cult has done to American Christianity may be irreversible. How can any serious Christian leader speak of truth when they've endorsed the most prolific liar in American political history? How can they preach about the sanctity of marriage when they've backed a serial adulterer? How can they claim to care for the least of these when they've supported policies that tear children from their parents' arms at the border? They've traded the Sermon on the Mount for a red hat. They've exchanged "blessed are the peacemakers" for "they spit, we hit." They've replaced "love thy neighbor" with "build the wall." Christ warned that many would come in his name and he would tell them, "I never knew you." If he returned today, the MAGA Christians would be first in line to crucify him again for his radical socialist agenda of feeding the poor and healing the sick without checking their insurance status. But here's the truly terrifying part. Cults don't simply dissolve when the leader falls. When prophecies fail, true believers don't abandon the faith, they double down. They create elaborate explanations for why the failure was actually part of the plan. When Trump lost in 2020, did his followers accept defeat? No, they created an entire mythology about a stolen election. When he was indicted, did they question their support? No, they sent him hundreds of millions of dollars and bought mugshot t-shirts. This is the danger we face: millions of Americans so thoroughly indoctrinated that they cannot distinguish between reality and fantasy, between democracy and authoritarianism, between Christ and Antichrist. They've been programmed to see any opposition as existential threat, any compromise as betrayal, any fact that contradicts their worldview as conspiracy. Deprogramming cultists is notoriously difficult. It requires patience, empathy, and careful extraction from the information bubble that sustains the delusion. But how do you deprogram half a political party? How do you break the spell when the cult leader has a major news network amplifying his every word, when social media algorithms feed the faithful exactly what they want to hear, when millions of Americans have made their cult membership their entire identity? The answer, I fear, is that you cannot. The cult will have to burn itself out, will have to face a disappointment so profound that even the most elaborate rationalization cannot explain it away. But until that day comes, and it may not come soon, we are left with the terrifying reality that one of our two major political parties is not a political party at all, but rather the political arm of a malignant cult of personality, immune to fact, reason, or shame. The rest of us can only watch and vote and hope that democracy proves stronger than delusion. But history offers precious little comfort on that score. The ruins of democracies that fell to demagogues litter the past like gravestones, each one inscribed with the same epitaph: "It can't happen here."